The laughter started the moment they walked into the restaurant together. It wasn't loud or obvious, not the kind of mockery you could point to and confront. It was worse than that. It was the subtle snickering behind menus, the raised eyebrows exchanged between strangers, the whispered comments just loud enough to be heard but quiet enough to be denied. Victoria, 51 years old and dressed elegantly in a burgundy dress she had spent an hour choosing, felt every single glance like a needle under her skin. Beside her, Adrian, 28 and radiating the kind of effortless confidence that comes with youth, squeezed her hand tighter and leaned in to whisper, "Let them stare. They're just jealous." But here's what those laughing strangers didn't know. Here's what nobody at that restaurant could possibly have understood just by looking at them. Exactly 1 year from that night, every single person in their small town would know the names Victoria and Adrian. Not because of scandal. Not because of shame. But because of something so extraordinary, so undeniably powerful, that it would change the way an entire community thought about love. This is the story of how the couple everyone laughed at became the couple everyone admired. And the twist at the end, the moment that silenced every single doubter, is something you will never see coming. Victoria had spent her entire adult life being sensible. She had married her college sweetheart at 22, had 3 children by 30, and had devoted herself completely to being the perfect wife and mother. She had put her own dreams on hold, first for her husband's career, then for her children's needs, always telling herself that her turn would come later. Later never came. Her husband, a man she had loved with the naive devotion of youth, left her when she was 46 for a woman 15 years younger. The irony was not lost on her. After 24 years of marriage, after sacrificing everything, she had been discarded for a newer model. The divorce was swift and brutal, leaving her with the family home, a modest settlement, and the shattered remains of an identity she had built entirely around being someone's wife. For 5 years, Victoria existed rather than lived. She went through the motions of daily life, worked her job as an accountant at a local firm, watched her children graduate college and move away to start their own lives. She dated occasionally, always men her own age or older, always relationships that felt more like job interviews than romance. She had resigned herself to the idea that passion was something that belonged to her past, a flame that had been extinguished and would never reignite. Then she met Adrian. He was the new graphic designer at her firm, hired to modernize their outdated marketing materials. The first time Victoria saw him, walking into the conference room with his portfolio under his arm and a smile that could light up a city block, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Something that terrified her. She ignored it, of course. She was his colleague, old enough to be his mother, and far too sensible to entertain such ridiculous notions. But Adrian didn't make it easy. He sought her out constantly, asking her opinion on designs, joining her for lunch in the break room, finding excuses to stop by her desk. At first, Victoria assumed he was just being friendly, the way young people often are with older colleagues they find non-threatening. But then came the company Christmas party. Victoria had almost not attended. Office parties had always made her uncomfortable, and since her divorce, she had avoided any situation that might remind her of her single status. But her co-workers had insisted, and she found herself standing alone near the punch bowl, nursing a glass of wine and watching the clock. Adrian appeared beside her, looking impossibly handsome in a dark suit that accentuated his athletic build. "You look like you're plotting your escape," he said, smiling that devastating smile. Victoria laughed despite herself. "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been watching you all night." The confession hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Victoria felt her cheeks flush. "Why would you be watching me?" Adrian set down his drink and turned to face her fully. "Because you're the most interesting person in this room. Because every time I try to talk to someone else, I find myself looking for you. Because I've been trying to work up the courage to ask you to dinner for 3 months, and I'm terrified you're going to say no." Victoria stared at him, certain she must have misheard. Adrian, I'm 51 years old. I know. You're 28. I'm aware. People will talk. They'll laugh. They'll think you've lost your mind. Adrian took a step closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of amber in his brown eyes. Let them talk. Let them laugh. I don't care what anyone thinks except you. He paused, his expression softening. So what do you think, Victoria? Will you have dinner with me? Every logical part of her brain screamed at her to say no. This was madness. This was a recipe for humiliation and heartbreak. This was everything she had spent 51 years learning to avoid. Yes, she heard herself say. I'd like that. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town, far enough from their workplace that they were unlikely to run into colleagues. They talked for 4 hours, long after the food was finished and the waiters started giving them pointed looks. Victoria discovered that Adrian was not the carefree young man she had assumed. He had lost his mother to cancer at 19, had worked his way through design school while caring for his younger sister, had experienced enough hardship to give him a depth that belied his years. Adrian, in turn, was captivated by Victoria's intelligence, her dry wit, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. He learned about her marriage, her divorce, her years of putting everyone else first. He saw the woman she had buried beneath layers of sensibility and self-protection, and he wanted desperately to help her rediscover that woman. I haven't felt this way in a long time, Victoria admitted as they walked to their cars at the end of the night. Maybe ever. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her. Neither have I. And I know this is complicated, Victoria. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work. But I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. He kissed her then, softly and tenderly, and Victoria felt something inside her that had been frozen for years finally begin to thaw. The laughter started almost immediately. When word got around their office that the young graphic designer was dating the middle-aged accountant, the reactions ranged from disbelief to open mockery. Victoria overheard a group of younger employees joking about Adrian's mommy issues. Her own peers were hardly better, expressing their concern that she was making a fool of herself or suggesting that Adrian must be after something, money perhaps or career advancement. But it was outside the office that the cruelty truly flourished. Their small town thrived on gossip, and the age gap couple became the favorite topic of conversation at every dinner party, church gathering, and grocery store checkout line. People didn't even bother to lower their voices when Victoria walked by. There goes the cougar, she heard someone say once. Bet she's paying for everything. Victoria wanted to crawl into a hole and hide. She wanted to end things with Adrian before the humiliation destroyed what little self-esteem she had left. But every time she tried to pull away, every time she suggested that maybe this wasn't worth the pain, Adrian would look at her with those earnest eyes and say the same thing. I love you. The rest is just noise. And somehow, impossibly, she would find the strength to keep going. 6 months into their relationship, Victoria's oldest daughter, Melissa, came home for a visit. At 30, Melissa was only 2 years older than Adrian, a fact that made their first meeting excruciatingly awkward. Mom, can I talk to you alone? Melissa asked after dinner, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. They sat in Victoria's kitchen, the same kitchen where Melissa had done homework as a child, where Victoria had packed lunches and wiped away tears and tried so hard to be the perfect mother. Are you out of your mind? Melissa demanded the moment they were alone. He's practically my age. What are people saying? What are my friends saying? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? Victoria felt her heart crack, but she forced herself to remain calm. I'm sorry this is hard for you, Melissa. But I need you to understand something. For 24 years, I lived my life for other people. For your father, for you and your siblings, for what society expected of me. And where did it get me? Alone at 51, wondering if I would ever feel alive again. Melissa opened her mouth to interrupt, but Victoria held up her hand. Adrian makes me feel alive. He sees me, really sees me, in a way no one ever has. Not as a mother, not as a wife, not as a role I'm supposed to play. Just as me. And I know you're embarrassed. I know this isn't what you imagined for me. But I'm asking you, as your mother and as a woman who deserves happiness, to give him a chance. Melissa was silent for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, she nodded. I'll try. But I'm not promising anything. The first year of their relationship was a constant battle against the world's expectations. They faced skepticism from family, ridicule from colleagues, judgment from strangers. There were moments when Victoria almost gave up, when the weight of everyone's disapproval felt too heavy to bear. But Adrian never wavered. When Victoria cried after a particularly cruel comment from a neighbor, he held her and reminded her why they were fighting for this. When she doubted herself, doubted that she was enough for him, he showed her in 1,000 small ways that she was everything. He brought her flowers for no reason, left love notes hidden around her house, planned weekend getaways to places where nobody knew them and nobody cared. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the laughter started to change. It began with Victoria's colleagues. The same people who had mocked her behind her back started to notice something. Victoria was different. She smiled more. She laughed more. She walked with a confidence she had never possessed before. The woman who had once been invisible, just another middle-aged employee counting down to retirement, had transformed into someone who radiated joy. I don't understand it, Victoria overheard one coworker say to another. But she seems genuinely happy. Then came the office retreat, a weekend event at a lakeside resort where employees and their partners were encouraged to mingle and bond. Victoria had dreaded it for weeks, knowing she would have to parade her unconventional relationship in front of everyone. But Adrian convinced her to go. What happened at that retreat changed everything. On the first night, there was a talent show. Couples were encouraged to perform together, and most opted for safe choices: karaoke duets, magic tricks, comedic skits. When Victoria and Adrian's names were called, a ripple of anticipation went through the crowd. What would the odd couple do? They walked onto the stage together, and Adrian sat down at the piano that had been provided. Victoria stood beside him, visibly nervous. Most of you know our story, Adrian said into the microphone. Or at least, you think you do. You see a young man and an older woman, and you make assumptions about why we're together. Some of you have laughed at us. Some of you have judged us. And I understand why. We don't fit the mold. The room was silent, uncomfortable. But I want to show you something tonight. I want to show you why I fell in love with this woman. Not her age. Not what she looks like. But who she is. He began to play, a soft, beautiful melody that he had composed himself. And then Victoria began to sing. Nobody knew she could sing. She had hidden that talent for decades, too shy to perform, too convinced that her voice wasn't good enough. But Adrian had discovered it one night when he caught her singing in the kitchen, and he had spent months convincing her to share it with the world. Her voice was rich and soulful, filled with the depth of a life fully lived. She sang a song about love and loss, about finding hope in unexpected places, about the courage it takes to open your heart when the world tells you to keep it closed. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The applause was thunderous. Victoria saw colleagues who had mocked her wiping away tears. She saw the ones who had called Adrian a gold digger looking at him with new respect. She saw, for the first time, the power of showing people who they really were instead of hiding behind the assumptions others made. From that night on, everything changed. The whispers at the office turned from mockery to admiration. People started approaching Victoria to ask about her relationship, genuinely curious rather than snidely judgmental. Young women asked her for advice about confidence and self-worth. Older women confided that her courage had inspired them to pursue their own happiness. And Melissa, Victoria's daughter, finally understood. She came to visit again a few months after the retreat, and this time, she asked to speak to Adrian alone. Victoria watched nervously as they walked into the garden, terrified of what might be said. An hour later, they returned. Melissa was crying, but she was smiling too. "I owe you an apology," she said to her mother. "I was so focused on what people would think that I never stopped to actually look at you. At how happy you are. At how much Adrian loves you." She turned to Adrian. "Thank you for giving my mother back to herself." The wedding happened on Victoria's 53rd birthday. It was a small affair, held in the garden of the home she had once shared with her ex-husband but had now transformed into something entirely her own. All three of her children attended, along with Adrian's sister and a handful of close friends who had stood by them through the difficult times. Victoria's son, Thomas, gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry. "When my mom first told me she was dating someone younger, I thought she was joking. Then I met Adrian, and I thought maybe he was the one who was joking. But then I saw them together, really saw them, and I understood something important." He looked at his mother, then at Adrian. Love doesn't care about age. Love doesn't care about what other people think. Love just is. And if you're lucky enough to find it, in whatever form it takes, you hold on to it with everything you have. He raised his glass. To Mom and Adrian. May the rest of us be lucky enough to find what you found. The years that followed were filled with the ordinary magic of a life shared. Victoria retired early, finally free to pursue the passions she had abandoned decades ago. She started painting, something she had loved as a young woman but had given up when adult responsibilities took over. Adrian built her a studio in the backyard and spent hours watching her create. They traveled to places Victoria had only dreamed of, the lavender fields of Provence, the ancient ruins of Rome, the northern lights in Iceland. Adrian photographed everything, documenting their adventures in a series of albums that would become treasured family heirlooms. Victoria's relationship with her children deepened in ways she hadn't expected. Without the stress and resentment of her unhappy marriage, she was able to connect with them as people rather than just as their mother. They came to visit often, bringing grandchildren who adored Uncle Adrian and thought nothing of the age difference that had once scandalized an entire town. And the town itself. The same people who had laughed and whispered and judged eventually became some of their biggest supporters. Victoria and Adrian became known as the couple who had defied expectations, who had proven that love could flourish in the most unlikely circumstances. Young people sought their advice. Older people looked to them as proof that it was never too late to find happiness. 10 years after their wedding, Victoria and Adrian were invited to speak at a local community event about their relationship. The room was packed with people of all ages, curious to hear the story they had all watched unfold. Victoria stood at the podium, Adrian beside her, and looked out at the sea of faces. "When we first got together, everyone laughed," she began. "They called us ridiculous, inappropriate, doomed to fail. They made bets on how long we would last. Some said 6 months. Some said a year. Nobody thought we would make it to 10. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. But here's what all those people didn't understand. Love isn't a math equation. You can't calculate compatibility based on birth dates or social expectations. Love is about two people who see each other, really see each other, and choose to walk through life together despite all the reasons not to." Adrian took her hand and continued where she left off. "Victoria taught me that age is just a number, but wisdom is priceless. Her experience, her perspective, her understanding of what really matters in life, these are the things that make me love her more with each passing year. I'm not with her despite her age. I'm with her because of everything her years have made her. Victoria smiled at him, the same smile that had first captivated him at that office Christmas party so many years ago. And Adrian taught me that it's never too late to feel young again. Not young in years, but young in spirit. He reminded me that I'm allowed to dream, to hope, to love with the same intensity one felt at 18. She turned back to the audience. So here's my message to everyone in this room, whether you're 20 or 80. Don't let fear of judgment stop you from pursuing what makes your heart sing. Don't let society's narrow definitions of appropriate love keep you from finding your person. And if people laugh at you, if they mock you, if they say you're making a mistake, just smile and wait. Because eventually, they'll see what you've known all along. The applause that followed was not the polite clapping of obligation. It was the thunderous response of people who had been genuinely moved, whose own beliefs about love and possibility had been challenged and expanded. After the event, a young woman approached Victoria. She couldn't have been more than 25, and she was crying. I'm in love with someone older, she confessed. Much older. And I've been so afraid of what people will say. But watching you up there, hearing your story, I think maybe I can be brave too. Victoria hugged her, this stranger who reminded her so much of herself. Being brave isn't about not being afraid, she said. It's about being afraid and choosing love anyway. Trust me. It's worth it. Now, whenever Victoria and Adrian walk into a restaurant together, people still notice them. The age difference is still visible, still unconventional, still something that catches the eye. But the laughter has long since stopped. What replaced it is something better: curiosity, admiration, and for some, hope. Because Victoria and Adrian are proof of something that the world often forgets. Love doesn't follow rules. It doesn't respect boundaries or timelines or expectations. It simply finds two people who are meant to be together and refuses to let go. And sometimes, the greatest love stories are the ones that nobody expected. The ones that make people laugh at first, then wonder, then believe. The ones that change not just the lives of two people but the hearts of everyone who witnesses them. If you've made it this far, if this story touched something in you that needed to be touched, take a moment to let me know. Drop a comment sharing your own experiences with unexpected love. Smash that like button if you believe that love is bigger than numbers and expectations. And if you want more stories that challenge what you think you know about connection and courage, make sure you're part of this community. Because stories like this, the ones that make us laugh and cry and hope, those are the stories that remind us why we're here.